What's up, YouTube? It's Monty. I'm back again after a very long hiatus. What we're going to do today in this video is we're going to go over that hiatus. We're going to go over the books that I read in 2018. The ones I don't have videos up because at this point I don't really feel like going back and making videos for these books, but I do want to talk about them. So we're going to talk about the hiatus, talk about the books, and then at the very end of the video, I'm going to unwrap literally my top 3 books of the year that I read, and not all of them are new releases. I think only one was only one was a new release this year. And we're gonna have fun. So, one, the hiatus. Summer just in general is not a good reading time for me. I don't read a lot during the summer. But I was compounded by the fact that after the summer ended, so like August, when I went back to the library for the first time, my phone decided that it no longer wanted to record audio. And so at that point, I was just like, I'm good. I was not in any kind of rush to like find a new way to record these videos. But then Black Friday happened, so I have a microphone, I have a little webcam. We're going to continuing on. In 2019, I will try to keep up and like review books after I finish them. But in 2018, after the summer, that just wasn't really a priority of mine because I didn't have the equipment and I didn't really care, honestly, enough to come and to record these things. But I do want to talk about what things I read because some of these books, while I don't want to do a full-blown review, I do want to talk about them. So I have my Goodreads opened up. In 2018, I read 31 books, which was more of my goal of 1. My goal is always 1 because I'm a very mood reader, and so if I'm not feeling like reading, I don't try to read for 20 minutes before bed or anything like that. If I'm not feeling it, I'm not feeling it. So the last book I read that I don't have a video of is Meddling Kids by Edgar Cantero, which I hauled in my library haul back in like May. It was meant to be like an adult take on Scooby-Doo, and so we had those very same tropes of like the monster, the mysteries, the ragtag group of people. Sort of towards the end, it became like very real monsters, and that was promised in the book description. But I just thought it was really messy when I read it, and I didn't think that it was actually all that good. And actually, halfway through the book, I had to go out and get the audio because it wasn't dense, but it just wasn't entertaining, and the audio of it wasn't any more entertaining, but it was easier to push through. And I don't really care to find what I rated it, but I know that I don't recommend it, and it was kind of a letdown, personally, for me. I think it was written in a way where I can understand people enjoying it, but it just wasn't for me. After that, I listened to Franchesca Ramsey's Well, That Escalated Quickly, Memoirs and Mistakes of an Accidental Activist. It was a memoir about Franchesca Ramsey, who is a YouTube personality and who has gone on to do other things. She was on The Daily Show for a while. Was it The Daily Show? I don't. It was a show on Comedy Central. She was a contributor on that. She wrote a book, and the book was great, and the audiobook was great, and I recommend it. I do. Then I read Liane Moriarty's Truly Madly Guilty, which was very much in the same vein as her other books that I've read. I recommend it if you enjoy the other books, but I don't know if it's her best book. I couldn't describe it to you because her books all have this sort of sameness, and this one was very much the same as the other ones I read earlier this year. It was good, but not amazing. Then I read Gillian Flynn's Gone Girl. I think I actually listened to the audio of that one. And again, I think the being in Amy's head just wasn't for me. And at several points along the way, I thought that her plan was actually just fucking terrible. It was shit. It was garbage. And she would have been found out. It didn't. At no point did I believe the book Amy was going to get away with anything. And I do believe that the movie is just better because I didn't question Rosamund Pike for a moment. I believed it. And like I said, I didn't question it. But there are moments in the book where I was like, you're not getting away with this. Maybe because I was already exposed to the movie. That could have clouded my judgment a little. I could have been comparing them simultaneously as I was reading it. But I just felt that like it never convinced me that she was actually this criminal mastermind. I believe she was intelligent. I believe she was a smart person, but I don't know. Maybe I just watched too much Forensic Files to be like, you know what, you would get away with this, because I didn't. I didn't think she would. I thought she would have been found out rather quickly, honestly. Then in October, I picked up The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Volume 1, The Crucible. I picked this up so I could watch the Netflix show, even though I'd already read, I think I want to say, like, the first issue of this, but my Goodreads, I think I recorded it incorrectly, or I just don't remember reading the whole volume. But I read this. I'm counting it in 2018, even if it is a reread. It wasn't good. It was pretty flat. I think that the show was better, even though the show has problems that I think were kind of glossed over because it dropped all at once and everybody binged it and we just kind of moved on. But I think upon like closer inspection and dissection, the show has issues. The comic had issues. It just wasn't. It wasn't amazing. Then I picked up Sailor Moon Eternal Edition Volume 1 by, I'm not gonna butcher this woman's name. Let's click on it. Let's see if I can do this. I know it starts with an N. By, let's see here, Naoko Takechi. That was all kinds of wrong, but everyone knows what Sailor Moon is. It's a very popular anime in the 90s, early 2000s. It's been revamped a couple of times, and I like it. I thought the first volume was pretty good. I enjoyed my time with it. I would recommend it to people. I will pick up Volume 2 at some point. Don't know when. I'm not really in any kind of rush, but it was a good read. Then I read Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. I actually listened to the audiobook of this, and I loved the audio. And I'm still on hold for the second 2 books in the series because, as we know, the movie was very popular this August. So the queue for these books has been ridiculous at my library. And while I've listened to the sample, it's a different narrator for the second 2, and I don't really like the new narrator that they brought in. She could have been, for all I know, the original narrator, Lydia Look, for those 2 novels, and for Crazy Rich Asians, they might have produced a new one. I don't know. But it's not the same, and I'm not really feeling it. But I also think that Crazy Rich Asians worked better as a movie. I thought I was going to really enjoy the book because I'd get more perspectives, I would get more depth, but I just feel that, like, the movie takes a somewhat different approach to telling the same story, and I feel like I just appreciate the movie's approach more. Maybe because it's simpler, but I also just felt that the added depth that the novel gave wasn't anything I was interested in. It didn't add anything that I needed it to add or wanted it to add, or the thing that I expected to be added just was missing, or it was added, but I didn't really appreciate it the way that I thought I would appreciate this edition. So I feel like it works better as a movie. I will continue with the series into 2019. I'll let you know what I think then, but as for the first book, I think you can just watch the movie and not read it, if I'm being honest. Then I watched Dumplin'. I read Dumplin' by Julie Murphy. I did watch the Netflix adaptation, and again, I think the adaptation works better. But I also feel that Dumplin', it didn't really care about the pageant, and I thought that was weird, because that was kind of the whole point of reading this book. Like, I went into this book to read about her taking on this pageant, and instead I had like 300 pages of a love triangle that I didn't care about, the main character didn't care about, the author didn't care about, and yet she wrote it in. We had another situation, much like in The Duff, where being with the fat girl is almost sort of presented as the cherry on top to redeeming an asshole character. In The Duff, it was much more apparent because the last like 15 pages of the book, the character just takes a complete left turn in like terms of personality. Whereas in Dumplin', the characters is like, oh, you don't know me, Willow Dean. I used to be an asshole. I used to be the most terrible person ever, Willow Dean. And then I met you and I fell in love with you. And it was not necessary. Like, I came for this for the pageant, and it was very much an afterthought. I didn't think that anything in the book was actually worth reading. I didn't care about the characters. I didn't care about Willow Dean, about her friend, other person. Nobody in this book did I care about. And I was very upset. I was also upset that there was a plus-size male character in the novel who is part of this love triangle that the author is not invested in. So we have like this like plus-size empowerment situation, but if you're a plus-size male character, you're going to be like sidelined. And I feel like if it had been a sort of commentary on how plus size women are often marginalized and pushed aside, I could have appreciated it. But I don't think that's what Julie Murphy was doing. I think it was very much like this is a YA, this is a sort of contemporary situation. I need a love triangle. Here's my love triangle. And it didn't work for me. I think that the movie was better. It didn't focus on the romance. It fleshed out characters that I thought needed to be fleshed out. It focused on the fucking pageant. And after watching the movie, I would be more interested in picking up the sequel to Dumplin' Puddin'. Because in the movie, I appreciated the side character, the other plus size woman character in the novel. I forget her name. That sequel or companion novel focuses on. And I would very much be in favor of watching Puddin' the movie because I love the actress who played that character and I would love to see her again. So watch Dumplin'. I don't know if you need to rush out and read it if you haven't already read it. Then I read The Mark of Athena by Rick Riordan. It was a good novel. It was probably my favorite of the Heroes of Olympus series. I think it worked the best. But as a whole, I think that the series was poorly plotted. I think it was poorly paced. And I think that there was absolutely no tension at any point during these books. I know they're aimed at a younger audience, so I don't, detract from them too hard. And I know that they're diverse, and I appreciate that, especially because they're marketed towards the younger demographic. But it didn't work for me. I thought it was just really lazy, and I didn't care for it. And it was just whatever. Then I read This Is Kind of an Epic Love Story by Karen Callender, and I didn't like this book either. I thought that it was really exciting because we had a black gay main character. Well, he wasn't gay, he was bisexual. We had a black bisexual main character who was a man who had other LGBT friends, and his love interest was a Latinx character. I thought all of that was great, but the book was only a little over 200 pages, and it was, again, poorly paced. It had a plot that was not identical, but very similar to a book I'd already read this year. I think they were similar. They do have their differences, but I think that This Is Kind of an Epic Love Story. It was just condensed, and it was too short to tell a love story, and nothing about it was epic, and nothing about it actually even made sense. And there were adult characters in the novel that were telling teenage characters, things that I thought were just strange and weird, and, no adult would actually say this to a teenager. It was just weird, and I didn't appreciate it, and I feel like maybe if it had been longer, I would have liked it more. Then I read They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera, which was another book that I was excited to read because it had Latinx main characters. They were, one, I would argue, I guess one was gay, and one was bisexual. And again, this book was just so good. It was so good. It was so good. It was amazing. It was good. It was just, there were some issues that I had with it. I thought that it was a little bit emotionally manipulative just based on the premise. But I appreciated it. I didn't think you were going to get me to fall for these characters in the course of 24 hours. But again, it was just good. It was a good time. And so if you need a good time, I do recommend They Both Die at the End. Then I read What If It's Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera. I picked this up solely because, one, it had just come out, and two, I had just finished They Both Die at the End. So because it had just come out, my library, the branch near me, had a copy, so I didn't have to wait very long for What If It's Us at all. And I was excited because even though I didn't like Becky Albertalli's Simon Versus earlier this year, I was I loved They Both Die. They Both Die, God tier. So let me go ahead and read this because Adam is involved. And so even if I didn't like Simon, I'm going to like this. And I didn't like this. I thought that we had two main characters, Arthur and Ben. Arthur was a white boy from Georgia, and Ben was Puerto Rican from New York. They meet in New York. They have a very cute meeting. For the record, I do think What If It's Us has a really solid 100 pages where we get the meet cute moment, where we get them introducing each other. Even them trying to find each other, I think, is also really cute. It works within the context of the story. But the 200, 300 pages in the middle, where they're going on dates and getting to know one another and building the relationship, that part didn't work for me. Because one, I never thought that Arthur was attached to Ben as a person. I thought that he was attached to Ben as an idea. At one point in the novel, Arthur, technically it's like a microaggression. It's a very small thing. But because I already didn't think that Arthur was with Ben for being Ben, but just because Ben was interested in dudes and Ben was attractive, the microaggression just felt a little bit, not intentionally, it just felt like it was a little bit more racist to me than I think how it was meant to come off. And I feel like the fact that Ben in the book was offended by this situation and like offended that again he felt the need to defend his Puerto Ricanness was like, you know, like that's the bridge where it ends. Like that's where we're stopping this relationship. Like that's where it's over. So when the relationship continued and it didn't really get any better, and I didn't think that Arthur really learned anything from that experience, I was just like, I'm done with this. Like I'm done with this as a relationship, as an ideal, as something that I think that people should reach and aspire towards. Like it didn't work for me after that. I was disillusioned already. That broke it. And then the epilogue happened, and I'm not going to go into what happened in that epilogue, but it was beautiful. It was everything that I wanted, and it redeemed the book for me, personally. I know a lot of people didn't like the epilogue, but I think because it worked for me, and I think that it single-handedly saved this book, because if it had ended on a note that I think most books like this would have, it wouldn't have worked. But the epilogue saved it. And so at the end of the day, I do recommend it, but just be warned that like you might not get out of it what you think you will. Both in terms of what I thought I was getting out of it and just what like most people might think they're going to get out of it. Then the last two books I read this year were also by Rick Riordan. They were The House of Hades, which is book 4, and The Blood of Olympus, which is book 5 in the Heroes of Olympus series. So I finished that series finally. Again, I thought that the series was poorly paced. I thought that there was like no tension at any point during the novels, and I don't hate them because again, they're marketed to a younger demographic. They are diverse. They do feature LGBT characters. Like they are a good place to start, but I don't think that they're books that I would recommend to people like the way I recommend the Percy Jackson series. And part of that is nostalgia. Part of that is like I grew up with Percy. And so, like, while it's nice to go back to Percy, it just didn't work for me this time. Like, I was too old to, like, not care about the poorly paced issues. I also don't think this book series needed to be 5. I think that if it was going to be 5, then it certainly needed to be paced better because it was terrible. Like, The Blood of Olympus, which is, you know, we've built to this point for 5 books. The climax of that is, like, literally, like, half a page. Maybe 3. Like, I guess you could argue it's like 3 pages, but like the moment itself is like literally half a page, and then it's kind of over, and then like it's just, and it's not satisfying. It's not satisfying. Didn't like it. So those are the books that I read while I was sort of not making videos, not making content, not talking to you about them. That was all of that. I'll leave links down below so you can check out the Goodreads links because I know I didn't do a good job of summarizing all of them. I just kind of gave thoughts. Some of them I gave descriptions, so I'll leave links down to all of those below. And now I want to get into my top 3 favorite books of the year, which I have wrapped because it is December and it is Christmassy time. But they're only wrapped because I bought them while there was like a school doing a fundraiser at Barnes & Noble, and so I was like, I might as well get them wrapped. So I have 2 paperbacks and 1 hardback, and I'm going to talk about them a little bit as I unwrap them, and I'm kind of sad because they are very pretty. Actually, I don't even know. I know what the books are, but I don't know which this one is. So this one is Autobiography by Christina Loren. And I read this earlier in the year. I'll leave a link down to my review. All of these books I bought because I found myself wanting to check them out from the library again and again. And so this in Utah. They're in Utah in this one. And it's very sweet. And it's very good. and I loved it a whole lot. Like I said, I'll leave a link down below to my review that I did earlier this year. These are in no particular order. I mean, kind of. I guess I would say if I was going to rank them, I would put Autobiography at number 3, but it wasn't really important to me for them to be in any kind of order. Except I do really want to do the last one last, so I guess for being technical, they are in an order. So, let's see here. So that makes this one. Where's the thing? Here's the thing. The new paperback edition of They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. Like I said, this book actually made me cry, which was very unusual for me. I had never cried while reading a book before I read this. And I do think that the premise is emotionally manipulative because you know that they are going to die. And I do think there are chapters in this book that are not necessary. This edition does, it does have a chart. I guess these are technically spoilers, but I don't think the camera is going to pick them up. The new paperback edition has like a connection chart about those side chapters. It was pretty easy for me to piece it together as I was listening, but I didn't like them. Like, I thought that they were a little unnecessary, and while they did add depth and dimension to the world and the story, it wasn't important to me, because what I found was, at the end, it was just really easy to justify how this book ends based on the previous side chapter, and while it's a book, and, like, you can do that, and even a movie could do the same sort of ending, I just didn't like that. I didn't like that aspect of it. But again, I do recommend this book. The paperback is really pretty. This one does have like notes, so you can see at the end, like I said, how the chapters are sort of woven together, how the stories interact. And it does have a journal that Adam Silvera wrote while he was plotting They Both Die at the End, so you can see the sort of thought processes there. I don't usually buy books for extras, but I do think that it's really nice that books have them now, just because it's fun. And so that means that this last one is the hardback. And so you know that I love this book because I paid for the hardback. And because I don't typically find myself buying hardbacks, because usually what happens is I go to Barnes & Noble and then I walk home, and walking home with a hardback is not fun. So I put the sticker on the wrong side, because apparently this is the front of the book, which, okay, wasn't expecting that. But it is Tomi Adeyemi's Children of Blood and Bone. This one, again, is like, I guess, like it also has an annotated chapter at the end of this one, and it's a signed edition. It's not, sadly, so we got the lovely little signature. It's not the one with the red edges, but that's fine, because I loved this book so much when I read it earlier this year that I know that I'm going to read this again next year, probably in February again, to mark like the 1 year. And I would even argue that this one features an LGBT romance. I know technically it doesn't. Technically, if we're being technical. But a bitch is not technical, and I do think that the real romance in this story is between our heroine Zélie and Amari. That to me is a ship to end all ships. It's the only thing that I fucks with. It's the only thing that I care about. Just being 100% honest. So I am excited to read this again, and I am excited because it is very pretty. And yeah, so those are my top 3. We got Children of Blood and Bone. We got some black women. Then we have some white gays in Autobiography, and then we have some Latinx gays in Adam Silvera's They Both Die at the End. I think that's everything you need in life. Everything you need. So if I were going to recommend some books to people, it would definitely be these 3. If you haven't already, you definitely need to check them out. If you've checked them out, any of the other ones I listed earlier in the video, let me know down in the comment section below. But until then, until next time,